What's going on, guys? Corrosive Bullet here, and today we are going to be doing something a little bit different, something that I've been kind of cooking up in the background that I feel like would be a fun video to make. So, starter decks, we have 8 of them now. So, what is the best bang for your buck, as well as being the most competitively viable starter deck of the bunch? Today, we're going to figure out and answer that question. So, here's what's going to happen. Firstly, we're going to talk about each and every single starter deck. We're going to look at the value of each of the individual cards, what cards are valuable, and what cards are useful going into the competitive landscape. And then we're going to look at each of these starter decks with the help that they kind of get offered through the other booster boxes and stuff. And then we're going to do a tier list for each of these starter decks as well. We're going to do 2 separate tier lists talking about the value of the starter deck, what's going to be the best bang for your buck in terms of value based on what is in the starter deck. And then we're going to talk about what is competitively viable of all of that. So then this way, by doing this collectively, by doing this together in 2 separate instances, you, the player, can make the best informed decision that you can make when it comes to wanting to start the game. This video is going to be mostly for newer players. So if you're an older player and you already got all the starter decks and blah, 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 like this doesn't necessarily apply to you. If you want some extra info in terms of like getting some additional pieces, maybe this might be helpful for you, but this is mostly for the new players. So feel free to listen in and, you know, join us on this journey as we kind of talk about it. But with that being said, we are on our way to 500 subscribers. So if you would please consider hitting that like button, that subscribing to the channel, letting me know in the comments section, what do you got? What's your favorite of the starter decks that you guys like to play, guys? Let me know down in the comments below. All right, so let's kind of get into it. So we're going to start off with the first starter deck, which is the Starter Goku. Now, Starter Goku is a deck that definitely has not seen a whole lot of play in the most recent of sets. But when we take a look at like some of the things here that this deck kind of offers, God Kamehameha is still one of the most used cards in red right now. Mostly for the control-y decks, for like Starter Daima, for Jiren. A lot of decks seem to be running this card. And for 16 cents, it's actually relatively easy to get, very cheap. Then you have the Double Striker, which is still the best Double Striker probably in red for the most part. The Starter Daima Double Striker is not as good because it's better when you run it in Daima decks, and it's KOing 20,000 power or less cards, not necessarily minusing 20. Sometimes the minusing 20 is just better to do than anything else. But I mean, 50 cents for that on top of the, if you want to get the alt art, it's only $5 there. Like, that's not a bad pick here. The Whis are still relatively used. The Whis are like, these are the cheaper options, the budget options, as opposed to the ones you get from set 1. So you might have an easier time picking these up because they're relatively cheap. But that being said, the rest of this set or this starter deck isn't really all that viable, honestly. Like, some of the Krillins here can be used sparingly depending on your build. I like to run these guys sometimes in like U7 and stuff. In like the U7 deck from set 1. This Gohan doesn't really see a whole lot of play anymore. This 17 doesn't really see a whole lot of play anymore. You might see this 17 being run in the new Android 18 deck in set 6. But that's really kind of it. This Vegeta is very niche. This Vanilla's niche. This Beerus doesn't really see a whole lot of play. So in terms of like what's viable here, it's your best cards out of this particular set is the God Kamehameha, the Double Striker, maybe the Shins if you're running a U7 specific deck. UI Goku can probably benefit this because there's the there's the Searcher Shin that can find the super combos, so you can get some use out of that. Master Roshi cantrips, the Whis here. I mean, there's a couple things here. There's a couple things. So if we want to go ahead and rank this, right? I would say in terms of its actual value, I would say it's probably somewhere around discount to valuable here. Valuable is being like it's worthwhile to pick up, but there's probably going to be better things to pick up than this guy. Discount is more so your discount's going to be more so like it's worthwhile to pick up if this is on sale, or if you can get it for a good price. For right now, I'm just going to put it in terms of its value. I'm going to put it probably at around discount because you're not really getting much use out of the rest of the deck, and maybe less than half the deck is like viable to pick up. Now, in terms of the competitive edge for this guy, he did recently just get a really good card in the 4-cost Frieza in set 6, which allows him to offensively and defensively be able to draw a card every single turn, which is going to keep your hand advantage up quite a bit. Outside of that, there's not a whole lot of support that he's gotten, but he is definitely better than he was before. You're gonna see a little bit more use of this guy probably in like the digital client. You might see this being run at locals a bit more with some interesting builds. For now, I would say he's probably a B or a C tier in terms of the competitiveness of what this guy is able to do. He's generic enough of a leader where you can pretty much build it how you want and it should work for you in its favor, but outside of that, like, he's not really going to be too competitive in the grand scheme of things. So for right now, I'm just going to put him in C, maybe even like B, but I'm going to put him in C for now just to kind of get him out of the way. But yeah, that is the starter deck for set 1. Starter deck 2 is the Blue Vegeta. Blue Vegeta is a very generic leader on the backside. He's just able to, when you're 7 cards or less in hand, you're able to boost this guy's power up to 35. He's seen a lot of play going from set 1. He's seen a lot of play going from like set 2 to like set 4. Set 5 and 6, he's been seeing a little bit less play, but he's still a very good leader, all things considered. In terms of what's kind of coming in this deck that's worthwhile to pick up, as well as what the cost is, Gallic Gun is still a very heavily used color or extra card being used in blue decks. As you can see, it's $1.59 per Gallic Gun that you were to pick up. The alt art's going for about $5, so definitely still viable there. The double striker here is still fantastic to use. Just being able to bottom deck something while also swinging for 35 is really strong. It's about the same. There's a couple of extra double strikers. There's a couple of double strikers in blue right now. There's this one. There is the starter Daima Vegeta one. That one's not as good, but that one allows you to draw a card. So it's depending on your matchup, it might be a little bit better. But in set 6, blue did get a really strong double striker that basically doubles the power of extra cards, or it doubles the effects of extra cards that you use in the same turn as it. So is this guy going to get usurped by the new double striker in blue? That I'm not 100% sure on. I can see some use for this guy still, even in this format, but I think a lot of decks are going to just pick up the new double striker because of how much value it has to offer. So with that being said, this guy's value may not be as this guy might not be as valuable going into the set 6 meta. The Gotenks package is still here. This Gotenks package can still be really solid. There's a lot of Goten and Trunks cards in the game, and that come within this particular set. So if you're looking to run a Gotenks variant of this deck, this is a great starting point, because you got this guy who's able to swing for 15 on the early game, able to bounce something back to your opponent's hand. You got this cantrip Trunks, which is still used today. It's still a solid cantrip. This Trunks is able to swing for 25,000, which is decent. This is able to recur a Trunks in a Goten off the out of your drop, which is always really good. Cycling in blue is really strong for a reason. So there's a lot of good options here. Gallic Gun has seen a little bit of a comeback. It's not as viable, but it can see some use here and there. Same with this Gohan. I see a little bit of fringe use with this Gohan here, but not like a whole lot. This Bulma doesn't really get used too much. Sometimes this Piccolo can be interesting, but now there's now better cards in the game that allow you to get extras back from your drop. Like the new 4-cost TN is able to get 2 from your drop. So I don't see this getting as much use as before. And this Videl, it's not a searchable super combo, so it is just what it is. It's another super combo at the end of the day. All in all, the value that's in this particular starter deck, this is from set 1. This is from over a year ago. So the fact that it's as there's as many options in here as there are that are still used in today's meta is actually pretty crazy. Obviously being, $12, it's actually a relatively cheap deck. As you can see, compared to the starter Goku deck, it is twice the price, but that's due to the fact that a lot of the cards in this particular in this deck are actually still usable. So in terms of value for this guy, I would say that this is a valuable deck to pick up. Just because depending on what you're looking to build, again, a lot of the Gotenks package is heavily reliant with a lot of the pieces in this deck. This leader is a generic enough leader. You can build this deck however you want, and it should work in your favor. This is a valuable starter deck to pick up. I would say that this is worthwhile and more worth your money than the starter Goku deck. If you can get it on discount, great, but for what the value of it is, it's actually worthwhile. In terms of its competitiveness, I'd put it around a B tier. It's around the middle of the road, I think, for a lot of these other starter decks that are kind of like involved, right? Again, leader is still solid. All the support is still solid. You can basically get any blue cards from any of the booster boxes from sets past and build it and throw it into this deck, and it'll work for you. Like, there's no real wrong way to build this deck right now. So for what it's able to do, this is fine. We'll come back to the competitiveness of it once we kind of fill this roster out a little bit. But for what this deck is doing, it's pretty damn good. Now we're going to go to starter deck Broly. This is the third starter deck. What's going on? I can't... Sorry about that, guys. I think that there was a glitch, I guess, on TCG Player, and I had to kind of reset everything. So that's kind of... I don't know what was going on with that. But anyway, let's talk about the Broly starter deck. So the Broly starter deck, it's interesting. When this deck came out, it was one of the best decks that came out in the set. But since then, there's been a lot of evolution when it comes to how green is played. And a lot of the cards that are in this starter deck are actually not really used all that much anymore. And you'll see what I mean here in a second. So as you can see, the Broly starter deck is starting at $15, which is the highest cost for any of these starter decks so far. We have this 8-cost Broly here, which is arguably the best card in this particular starter deck. It is still used. Like, as you can see, the alternate art for this Broly is going for $32 individually. Which is just crazy in my eyes that it's going for that much. But even just the standard SR, not the alt art, is going for $250 almost. I mean, you got Gigantic Meteor, which is going for $5. This card is still like used today in a lot of green decks. Not so much in the most recent Broly deck, not so much in the Green Vegeta deck, but it is still being used in like every other one to an extent. Destructive Strength can still be used on occasion. It's not like it's got some fringe usage now, but it's still like there. King Vegeta is a Saiyan, so I don't remember if there's a means to be able to like search this guy in your deck, but if there is, you guys can let me know that down in the comments below. But I mean, again, it's a standard super combo, but like when you look at everything else that's kind of here, there's nothing really else that like stands out in this particular starter deck. Like, you obviously have like this Turles that helps you ramp, but there's more effective means to ramp, and there's not that many green decks now that do ramp. All these other there's a bunch of other green decks that are doing something different than ramping their energy. So ramping is not really like the kind of thing that you're doing unless you're running different decks. This Vegeta on occasion could maybe see some use, but not a whole lot. Vanillas don't really see much use. These vanillas don't really see much use. The Shimoians is a very specific package utilized with the Paragus cards, and that even then, like, you're not really going to be playing these guys all that much. This card doesn't get use. The Paraguses don't really get much use. Moa can be used sometimes, but it's specifically for extra cards or Paragus. It's a very fringe searcher. So in terms of like what this Broly deck starter deck kind of offers you, there's not really much here in terms of its actual value. You have a couple of niche cards that are still really strong and used today, but the value of the cards itself within this starter deck is actually not bad. So for $15, you know, you get two of this Broly, you get 2 of this Gigantic Meteor, and then you get a playset of the Destructive Strengths, I think is how that works. So like just from 2 of these and 2 of these, you already have your value, and then you get all of this. So in terms of its actual value, it's actually not bad value for what it is. So I would say I'd say it's around the valuable to discount tier, just based off of the actual value of the stuff that is here. Now, if we're going to get into the competitiveness of what this deck is kind of doing, In my personal opinion, I know there's probably some people that are going to defend this deck to death, but the new Broly is just better. It's just outright better. And none of the cards except for the 8-cost Broly and maybe Destructive Strength is going to be used in the new Broly deck with set 6. So in terms of the value of how good, in terms of the competitiveness of what this deck has to offer, I'd say it's probably down lower. It's down lower on this competitive tier list than all things considered. The value's there. If you're looking to get a collection of like really strong green staples, if you're able to find a good deal on this, or even if you're able to find it in the wild for 15 bucks, like it's worth your value. But in terms of like how valuable it is in terms of a competitive standpoint, it's not the greatest deck out of all these. So it's relatively low tier compared to some other starter decks. So just keep that in mind. Next, we got Frieza. Now, Frieza he was relatively decent going in on release in set 1. But then Frieza kind of fell off going into set 2, 3, and 4. And then he's seen a little bit of play in set 5s, and maybe he might have some play still in 6. But I mean, there's still a good chunk of cards in here that still gets used to an extent, right? You have this 1-cost Frieza. Janemba utilizes this. Super Boo utilizes this. Still a very strong card. It just rests any card on the board. If you're running a Cooler or Frieza specific deck, Frieza's army is relatively solid still. Maybe Cooler not so much, but Frieza utilizes Frieza's army quite a bit. This Frieza is still relatively good. I know a lot of people you can't really see. My bad. I'm like looking at this one up here. This guy's good. This guy's good and still used in some decks still. He's got like an Ultimate Battle variant alt art, which might be, if you're looking to spend like a little bit extra, you could probably get the alt art variant for this, but this is still a relatively useful card. Sorbet is a decent cantrip. This King Cold can see maybe a little bit of use, not a whole lot of use, but he's kind of there. Double Strike Frieza. There's just a better Double Striker in the Majin Buu, or the Kid Buu Double Striker. So I don't think you're gonna get a whole lot of value out of this guy, but if you're looking for like a budget option, this guy is still relatively solid. Death Ball can still be used on occasion. I've seen some people use Golden Death Beam, but that's also kind of niche. As far as everything else that's kind of in here, there's not really much else that's worthwhile. So for $5, you're getting some decent options. You're getting 2 of these Friezas, and just between these Friezas, the Death Ball and the 1-cost Frieza, you're getting your money back basically, which is pretty nice. That's not bad. But in terms of like what this deck's actual value is, I think I'm gonna have to actually say that this deck is probably questionable. I only say this because I'm only saying this just because in terms of what's offered in the actual starter deck here, like the leader is something that's worthwhile to get. The 1-cost Friezas are worthwhile to get. Maybe you want to pick up some Death Balls. Maybe you want to grab 2 of these. But I would say that if you're finding this in the wild, you're probably not seeing this for $5 in the wild. You're probably not going to see this in the wild. So buying it on here would probably be ideal for the most part. But there's just better yellow decks, and a lot of these cards that are in this deck are actually not really like usable in the grand scope of things. So yeah, just keep that in mind. I guess it's questionable in terms of its value. I would say that in terms of value, you're probably better off just buying the singles for the stuff that you want from the starter deck rather than buying it outright. But that's just me. That's just me. In terms of its competitiveness, I would say, as he stands right now, I'd probably say he's probably a C tier. He's nothing crazy. He's got his place in the meta, but he's more of a Trojan horse type of deck. Like he might catch you off guard if you see him on the client. And he can still do relatively well, especially with the Mecha Frieza into the King Cold into the Secret Rare Barrier Frieza combo. Like it can surprise you. But there is just better starter. Some of the other starter decks here are just better outright. Next, we're going to get into Bardock. Bardock was awesome in set 3. I love this Bardock deck quite a bit. Bardock's biggest issue, however, though, is the fact that he is heavily reliant on the Bardock's crew, like special trait. So if we look at what this deck has within it, you have the Kakarot SR. This card can still see some use. It allows you to basically generate your marker early if you don't have a marker. Sometimes Gogeta can benefit off of this. Sometimes Baby can benefit off of this, just getting an early marker in, but it just kind of is what it is. The Double Striker is probably still, in my opinion, the best Double Striker in the game, just because it's got removal, which is always strong. You're able to get this card out relatively early now with cards like New Legend. Yeah, that's there's other cards like the Chi-Chi in set 6 that help to benefit to get that ability to proc off a little bit easier without, dwindling out your hand. So I mean, that's still a solid card. Resisting Destiny still gets quite a bit of use, which is actually kind of nice. Just being able to combo something on your board or in your hand and then using this card for an extra 15,000, replacing it in hand. Still pretty good. But that being said, once again, there's not really much here. This Bardock can maybe see a little bit of play, but there's not really much in this particular starter deck outside of the leader and the Double Striker and maybe Kakarot and Resisting Destiny. If you look at the staple of, if you basically look at what the value of the deck is, it's $6. So again, you're looking at two of these. So you're talking like maybe $2, almost $3. The leader is $24. This is getting $11. So in terms of its actual value, it's not really all worthwhile. The value is not really there. You're spending $6.80 for a couple of cards here and there that you will be able to use, but everything else is relatively dead on arrival. It's a bit of a shame because the Bardock deck when it came out was really spot on and really good. That's the competitive. Hold on. I would say getting the Bardock deck right now for the price that it is, probably not worth it. If you want to run a black deck, if you want to run a Bardock leader with some like generically good black stuff, just buy the singles. I'd say buy the singles for it, and save a couple bucks. Maybe you get everything that you need from the singles, and you only spend $3 or $4. You're saving $2, which I think is relatively fine. Again, in the wild, if you find this in stores, it's probably not going to be $6, so it's definitely not worth it in that regard. In terms of how he's standing out as a leader, though, I think he still stands out relatively well. He's got a lot of support. He's doing some. I think he can definitely stand out in the current meta. So I would probably put him up here in B. I mean, he's a solid deck. Being able to swing for 25,000 and just working off of that alone, using his ability to kind of cycle the top of your deck to pick the next cards that you're going to be able to draw can be helpful. Yeah, I'd say Bardock is still a very solid deck for the most part. In terms of its competitiveness, it's just the value for the actual starter deck itself is just not really worth it on its own. Next, we're going to go into the starter deck Daima. So starter deck Daima definitely stands out. It's probably, in my opinion, one of the better starter decks. He's a generically good leader on his Awakened side. He's basically a middle ground for the Super Saiyan Daima from set 5 and a Beerus. He's basically kind of meeting both of them in the middle by pushing up your battle cards by 5 and minusing your opponents by 5. Yeah, starter deck leader still really good. Cantrip Sun Goten. This is actually the Sun Goten cantrip is relatively good in either this deck or the Super Saiyan Daima, just being able to boost his power up when needed. The Double Striker in this particular matchup or in this particular starter deck, it's not really all that crazy. It works really well with this leader. This deck works really well with the Super Saiyan Daima leader. So there's value here, but the value of this Double Striker is only dependent on if you're running either this guy or the Super Saiyan Daima. This Chi-Chi can be pretty good. She's a 2-cost blocker that basically replaces herself. That's a 10k combo in hand if you're not playing her. So again, there's some use there. You can get some use out of her. You got this Android 17. You got this Android 17 that, again, Android 18 came out in set 6. So you might see this guy in play in that particular deck, maybe. Android 18 Mini, once again, still a really solid card. Just being able to remove a cantrip on play while also self-awakening you is a decent card. Krillin, Krillin's not all that crazy for the most part, in my personal opinion. He basically becomes a 25k swinger if you have a battle card at 20,000. The extra cards, I like these extra cards. They just don't see a lot of play right now. You don't really see these cards getting used much. Red is not really a color that really like hones in on its extra cards. And honestly, a new adventure card in set 5 is just a better card to use in this deck than these are. So take that for what you will. And then you don't really see this Piccolo all that much. Discarding to get an effect off is not really good in red. This Gohan is just a 30k crit. There's better things to be playing on turn 4. Glorio in set 5 is just a better card outright. This Shin can see some fringe usage, but not like a whole lot, right? So in terms of like the stuff that's in this deck, you got your cantrips, which are decent. You got your double striker, which is good for this particular like special trait, the Daima stuff. This can be utilized in 2 different decks relatively well. The Chi-Chi can be used in other things outside of the Daima decks, but she's also a little niche. Same with the Android 17. This Android 18 Mini is great in either of them. So I mean, there's some stuff here. Is it worth the $6 by itself? Probably not. You probably would be better off just buying singles, I think, as opposed to just getting the starter deck in itself, right? So I would say questionable. I would say questionable only due to the fact, in terms of its value, only due to the fact that like you're spending almost $7. You're spending almost like $6.20 for stuff that is just cents. Like it's worth cents. So again, it's questionable. I only say questionable though because a lot of the stuff in here is good if you're looking to pick up some booster boxes with it as well. In terms of this deck's actual like strength, this guy's really solid. He is a really, really good deck. Whether he's S tier or A tier, I am not 100% sure on. I'm going to put him in A for now, just due to the fact that he is better than all these other leaders, in my opinion. He is kind of getting the job done. He's controlling your opponent's board. He's boosting up your own team stuff. All the support, all the generic red support that's just good outright can be run with this guy. You can build this generically as you want, and it should work relatively well. The support from the booster boxes really elevate this deck. So for what this guy is doing in terms of where he stands in the current meta, like this guy's good. He's really solid. Next, we're going to go into the starter deck Daima Vegeta. Now, this deck sucked when it came out. It was terrible. There was no good support for this guy. His leader effect was abysmal, and this guy didn't really see a whole lot of usage, right? Didn't really see a whole lot. Now, that being said, with a lot of the support that's come out now, this might actually be the best deck, the starter deck to pick up. Let's kind of go over it. So, cantrips are cantrips. They're kind of whatever. Proud Saiyan, very strong extra card. This is used in a good chunk of decks. It's utilized in this deck. It's utilized in Zamasu. It's utilized in this can be utilized in some other blue decks as well. It's basically a super combo that replaces itself. It's basically a stronger Gallic gun that can only be used on your opponent's turn than on yours. This Marin is the best cantrip in the game, just due to the fact that it's able to search the top card of your deck. And if it's not something that you want to draw, you can bottom deck it and draw a different card instead. It allows you to cycle your deck just a little bit, which is neat. So, best cantrip in the game, hands down. There is a reason that this card is going for almost $5. Like, it's really strong. This Piccolo, I think this Piccolo might see some play. I need to once the client gets fixed with some of the bugs that's kind of happening with this deck, I might run this deck a little bit more. involved. I want to get more playtesting in with this deck, but I could see some usage for this Piccolo, just being able to minus cost to get the leader effect off. Again, this Double Striker, I don't know how good this Double Striker is going to be in the grand scheme of things, just due to the fact that, you know, it's the other Double Strikers I think are just a little bit better, and the effect for this guy is a little more niche. It's very specific situations that you'll get this off. This Android 18 is kind of whatever. She's a Self-Awakener, 20k swing on your turn. That's 30k on defense. Not bad. This Hercule is probably going to see a decent amount of play in this deck now. This Krillin, Krillin's kind of whatever, but this Krillin can be used in the Satan City deck. It might be like a 50th card option in that deck, but it's not like crazy good by any means. Bulma's okay. Bulma allows you to look at the top 2 cards and then add one of them to your hand. So allows you to cycle 10k combos. Not the worst thing. And this Boo is kind of the same. Like, it's a Self-Awakener that allows you to basically cycle whatever your next draw is. So in terms of the stuff that's in this deck, you're probably going to get use of at least half of it. But just looking at what the Marin by itself, looking at the Double Striker, if you're looking for double striking options, Proud Saiyan is a very strong card as well. And the fact that you get 2 of these Marins and the deck is worth 758 right now, I'd say this is probably the best bang for your buck in terms of what the starter decks are offering. And that's no cap. There's just Marin alone makes this deck valuable to kind of go for. And it's actually, with all the support that's come out with this guy too, like, this guy's runnable. This guy is definitely one of the better blue decks now because of the two support cards that he got in set 6. So I definitely believe that this is the highest value starter deck that's here. And that's mainly due to the fact that you're getting some really good options in this particular starter deck that will actually, like, carry you forward going into this new set that came out. In terms of its competitiveness, I want to say it's S tier, but I think I think you could make an argument for either of these two being better than one another. It's hard to say. Blue is able to control this guy's board a little bit better. And with the stuff that's in set 6 that benefits this guy, I want to say that this guy will be better than this guy, just because blue is good into red 9 times out of 10. But we'll kind of have to see how the meta kind of shapes first. But I'll stick with this for now. And then the last starter deck before we wrap up this video is the new Super Saiyan 3 Daima Vegeta. So in terms of the value for this, obviously it just came out, so it's going to be a bit more on the expensive side. This is one of the more expensive decks. Like, Broly is probably the only thing that's worth more, that has more value in this in terms of like how much you got to pay for it. But if we take a look at it, the leader itself is heavily dependent on having Daima cards in your deck. So let's take a look at some of the Daima cards that's kind of like here, right? So we got Cantrip Piccolo is a Daima card. I mean, everything in this deck is actually Daima. So like in terms of like what this deck is offering, like everything in this deck is going to work with this leader, which is pretty good, all things considered. I can't give you an accurate representation of like the value of each individual cards since they're all out of stock, but I'll kind of talk about like what they're kind of doing in terms of like the meta and kind of give you guys can kind of go from there. But your vanillas are not anything too crazy. Your vanillas don't really do a whole lot in the midst of things. This Shin being able to cheat out this Kibito is not terrible for what it is. And it's a real late game like Self-Awakener if you need to Self-Awaken later in the game. This Bulma is like a must play in this deck just because she boosts the leader up by 10,000 when you put her in rest. And this guy double swings. So that's a 2 30k swings off the leader, which is really strong. Pansy is a Self-Awakener that's able to, rest one of your opponent's battle cards. This Tamagami 2 can kind of protect itself at the end of your turn by switching himself back into active. It's not crazy good, but it's like viable. Results of Training is probably one of the better cards in this set in this starter deck too, just because it's basically Gallic Gun in blue in the starter deck 2, the original Super Saiyan Vegeta deck. It's basically, this is the exact same card. So this card's actually really good for what's going on in here. Kadan is okay. Kadan is a little costly for what he's doing, but he's not a bad card. He's a 10k combo, which can be very helpful. Glorio can be decent, but he is easily removed because he's a 2 cost. So he doesn't really, like, you might get a couple uses out of this guy in your game, but it just kind of is what it is there. Revive Bug is a deceptive card. I think when you're playing, you know, like the Shin into the Kibito stuff and whatnot, when you're able to play your boards extremely wide, Revive Bug can actually get you places. But in the more competitive build of this deck, like, you're not really going to get Revive Bug off a whole lot. It's a bit deceptive, and you don't always find a way to be able to play this. This Vegeta is very situational, but in this starter deck, you can get some use out. And then obviously this guy is one of the best cards in this set. He's basically the Majin Vegeta from set 3 or 4. 3. I think it's set 3. He's basically stronger. He's a bit more costly, but he's a bit stronger. He's able to KO 4 costs or less, which is what a lot of the game kind of plays. So he has a better curve. And then he's able to swing twice for 30, which is really strong. So this guy's really good. So in terms of the value, obviously, if you're looking to get into the most recent set of things, this guy is going to be your highest value, especially if you're looking to run yellow. The new Goma set can utilize some of the stuff that's in here. The new set 6 can utilize. There's stuff in set 6 that this deck benefits from as well. So this deck is probably also up there. So the way that I'm kind of looking at the value of this, right? The way that I kind of see the value, right, is that if you're going off of the value of the starter deck and you're looking to get the support that goes with it from the actual booster box, I would say that this is probably better than this, just because the support that this guy got is a bit better than what the support that this guy got is from the actual booster box. But if we're looking at these two starter decks in isolation with themselves, with no booster box support, it's going to be like this. So take that for what you will. Take that for what you will in terms of what the value is for each of these. But I would say that this is probably what the value actually is for all the starter decks. In terms of the competitiveness for the Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta, I would definitely put him, again, he's probably up here in the A rank. Maybe he might be better he might also be in like the bottom of the S tier. I would say it's probably more so this, just due to the fact that this guy is going to be a bit more aggressive into this guy. But this guy's going to be able to control this guy's board to a relatively decent extent. And in my playtesting between this guy and this guy, this guy just controls your board entirely. Like, you are not going to be able to keep a board with this guy being your opponent. So that's where I'm going to place it. So here is the value of the starter decks in terms of what is the most valuable to the least valuable. And this is the competitiveness of the starter decks from the most competitive to non-competitive. So that is my tier list and value list for these particular decks. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Do you guys agree with this? Do you guys not? Newer players, did you find this helpful? Is this not helpful? Let me know down in the comments below. That being said, guys, this weekend I am going out of town. So I will not be around all of next week in terms of doing streams and putting out videos. So I am going to do my best to get a couple of videos out next week while I am out of town and away. That being said, go and check out some other creators in the meantime. Until those videos go up, check out Phil Plays TCG, Tarmo Tim, Universe X TCG, Open Mango. Go and check out Drumlin the Dwarf. And all of those guys while I am away. The Eggman's another one. So definitely go and check everybody out where you can. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for the love and support. As always, I will see you guys all when I get back from my vacation. Peace.